This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, true seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. I'd like to welcome to the show today, Harriet Suchet.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. I hear you are casting from a new place today.
Yes, and still completing the transfer of residences, but I'm in the one I'm in. So,
Nice.
and
I believe we have no... Go ahead.
I was going to say, people pulled a lot of strings to get me in here, so thank you
That's
to
beautiful,
all those people who are probably listening.
Good. And then I believe we have Nolan Del Campo here, if he is back on screen with us.
Yeah, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, Nolan. Oh, good.
I've had
I can't wait for this show.
I know. I had an extremely interesting week. I began transcribing a case from the 1850s, which is obviously in that very ornate script, as one would see in like the Declaration of Independence. Now, of course, this is a secretary who is taking notes of the case that involves the Mexican land grants in California back from the 1800s. And he is using very much shorthand, if even articulating letters at all in the script, and sometimes having run-on words, which means he could put the words "I have known" all together as one single word, and of course it's not articulated greatly to be able to identify three different words. So it's a really complicated job, but it's extremely interesting to see what was going on in California back in the 1800s, these land grants that were given, and then of course the United States was trying to come in and take that land away.
Yeah, a lot of brown people getting swindled.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And nearly every name. What's that?
And well, Native Americans are brown too, but yeah, both the former Mexicans and the Native Americans got cheated out of a bunch of land.
Well, I was happy to see that in my research, I came to the end fairly quickly because I was trying to make sure I had the names of the players in the case correctly, that Mr. Vallejo did, in fact, win his case and was able to keep the Rancho Soscol, or Soscol as we probably know it. But I was seeing names like Monterey, Vaca, Vallejo, Benicia. So all of these names were names after individuals that were given these particular properties. So it's interesting to now see the history of these cities, which I grew up in.
Well, Vallejo is one of the biggest property owners in the whole state, especially Northern California. And all the land that used to be land that is now Lake Berryessa, he owned all that land, as well as more.
Yeah. So I'm seeing in the depositions where they're mapping out, or at least giving natural objects to give us a guide as to what property was actually owned by him. So you get to see what area, from what area to another. So it was from Sassoon Bay to the mouth of Napa River. I mean, the logistics of trying to identify how much property was actually granted to him was interesting to go through these depositions and see all of these individuals talking about what they believed that was given to them. And it was by Governor Michael, I don't know if I'm going to say it correctly, but Michael Torrena or Michel Torrena. Does that sound familiar to you?
I think that's
the governor at the time that granted. And he evidently had...
Must have been the first governor of California, because California became a state in 1849, and that was 1850.
Yep. Well, he had passed. So by the
Mm-hmm.
time we're doing these depositions in 1852, he's dead. And that's why everybody's trying to identify how much of the land this governor, and I believe he was a governor also associated with Mexico. So he was, they were asking whether or not he had the powers to grant California land, was also one of the questions coming from the United States side. Either way,
Mm-hmm.
it's a big job, 334 pages long to transcribe not only 1800 script, but the idiosyncrasies of an
Mm-hmm.
author who tends to use shorthand, run on words, and then literally, in a lot of cases, it's just humps that he's executed. And I've got a first letter and a last letter, and I've got to figure out what that word says.
Another thing that legally regarding the land grants and things like that in California, Texas, and other areas Southwest is the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which is the treaty that ended the Mexican-American War. That
Yes, and I
by that
believe that they're
treaty, all the
talking about
Southwest
that.
came to the United States. Yeah, and
Yes.
so the part of that treaty, the United States as an entity was supposed to honor the land grants. So I think that's what
Right.
this case is
And then the
about.
United States then
California,
decided
United States interplay.
right. And then the United States decided they didn't want to play that game. They
Right.
So this is basically Vallejo against the US in order to keep his lands, describe what those property lands are, and the jurisdiction of those lands. So on another note, I
Interesting.
was comped tickets last night to the Better Business Bureau Torch Awards, which I had seen the email come across. And of course, I'm getting ready to leave the country. So I didn't think I was going to entertain it. And they called and asked me to come and offered me tickets for dinner. And it turns out that they actually awarded me, let's see if we can see this. I received a
Mm-hmm.
milestone award for 10 years for an A+ better rating with the Better Business Bureau for ethics and morals and integrity, which I thought was absolutely awesome.
It is
I guess
awesome.
it just means, yeah, I guess it just means that and let's not forget the beautiful little notebook that I got, right? So I can now take some notes somewhere. I don't know. Good times though.
Proud of
Uh,
you.
Thank
Will you be
you.
working together on the Backus case?
Yes. I did hear that you
Yeah.
were very interested in taking that on. I'm kind of excited myself because I've been watching them painstakingly go through this on their own without any help, and I'm glad that you're on board.
They waited too long. Yeah, I mean, they got some deadlines coming up. But anyway, it's a whole different matter.
I
Yeah.
know. All right, so let's get back to the show at this. Oh, and Netflix just dropped a new Zodiac docuseries. Now, of course, the second that I went to populate it and turn it on, I could see that the cover of their advertisement actually had an obscured version of Arthur Lee Allen's face. And so I
Right.
let it sit there and play as if it's on its trailer. I didn't actually start the movie because once I saw his face, I was disinterested. There is no way I'm going to watch another video or another anything that says Arthur Lee Allen is the Zodiac killer. But as the trailer played to kind of get you excited, involved, I'm seeing his friends, his family, people who knew him. These people all actually climbed onto this particular movie. And I don't know if it's because of their 15 minutes of fame and they get to be on TV, why they would do something like this. But they are literally all up there to say, oh, I can't believe that he was, but it turns out he is. And they are literally running an entire documentary on Arthur Lee Allen, who has been cleared 5 ways from Sunday. And we've shown you how through the FOIA files. They've searched 3 different properties that he owned, including his mother's. They found absolutely no evidence. The handwriting was not a match. The fingerprints were not a match. The DNA was not a match. This man died of a heart attack at the age of 58. And no wonder the stress of an entire, state coming down on you thinking you're a serial killer is just absolutely absurd. So the man died throughout this process, and now they're actually making documentaries stating that he is the Zodiac, and it is just completely laughable. Will the media, will Hollywood, will the law enforcement just please stop participating and blaming Arthur Lee Allen? Give it up, guys.
I
It's
think
broken.
one thing that corroborates that theory, even though it's wrong, is that he was down in Riverside at the time of the Sherry Joe Bates killing. So he
All right.
was
So
at the college there.
now, what did you solve in those codes, Harriet, in regards to Arthur Lee Allen?
That he had a sister-in-law associated with the school that Cherry Joe Bates went to. So some kind of funny records happened. So
And
there's
he flew plane,
a
right?
link of him. Yeah, there's a link to definitely. And yeah, he was down in the Riverside area. Yep, but he has family in-laws there.
Now, let's also remind everybody the red herring. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about here today is a red herring in the Oakland County child killer case. And this comes via Tony. But the fact that Arthur Lee Allen was actually a pilot and flew a plane and could fly all the way to Riverside and otherwise, the fact that Jack knew Arthur Lee Allen, he stated after seeing him come up as a suspect on the news at home, Dennis recalls him saying that, I know that nice man, he gave me a ride home. So here's a connection directly between Jack and Arthur Lee Allen. And we know that there was, when I talk about the ability for Jack to get around, I've always talked about there's a pilot, right? For the mob or for the politicians or for whoever. They had one specific pilot that ran different trips for different things. I wouldn't be surprised that he unknowingly or unwittingly had become part of something that he wasn't entirely aware of. And then he was led to be the red herring suspect that they were looking after, and the way that the evidence would have been pointed at him.
I was going to say that it was the sister-in-law and his brother that alerted the authorities to him as a suspect.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Mhm.
And they're probably the ones that are on the documentary.
Family turned on him.
Who needs DNA like with D'Angelo? We don't need to track your granddaughter's DNA all the way back to your forefather's family like that. Either way, you guys, Arthur Lee Allen is not the Zodiac killer for oh so many reasons. Now, this brings us back to the Oakland County child killer, and this is Tony once again. He gave us the great information on that article that I read in 2023, and it says one of the kids' fathers was an executive at GM. If I remember correctly, GM made the Gremlin. Is that true? I don't know if the GM...
Definitely, yep.
And he called that a red herring.
Yeah, he was very Nazi. Sorry. I did the Decoded Misses. We did the show last week, but yeah, he's definitely with GM and amazing stuff.
Right. Oh, he's saying one of the kids' father was an executive at GM, not Chris Bush's father, who was with GMAC.
Well, yeah.
So this may have been a direct hit to GM in general, and we have the GMAC key ring that goes back to Southfield, Michigan, that was in Jack's belongings as well. So maybe they're wanting to point out GM on purpose in the middle of these acts. So he says, GM made the Gremlin. It's a red herring. Local 4 WDIV, Oakland County child killer, actually lists a link for the clickondetroit.com/topic/Oakland_County_child_killer/. Will take you to this particular article. I've not read it yet. He said lots of info. This is the best. And that's at https://www.clickondetroit.com/new//4/1/4/watch-here-5-part-oakland-killer-docuseries. So at that, he says, all anyone has to do on my YouTube channel is find my episodes or my podcasts, at least one of them, then subscribe. And then all of the episodes are there in order, starting with the newest one. I thought that was great news for people to hear. So just find my channel, Finding the Zodiac, Nanette Bartow, any of the episodes, subscribe, and you will get all the episodes in order so that you can watch them as I've presented them. And let's get ourselves onto the next slide. What's that?
Go ahead. The website sounds too difficult to even enter on the keyboard.
What's that?
You got to do so many different inputs.
For those URLs?
Yeah.
Well, they can simply look at
yeah. Maybe there's a link you could click on.
Well, that was the link that I gave out.
Okay. Oh,
So that
right.
with the hyphens and / that was for the radio listeners in case they wanted to catch and capture it. But for those that are watching, they could obviously just look and read that URL off the presentation. But this brings us back to the murders that are not linked to the Oakland County child killer, or at least as law enforcement and the media is stating. There are 4 other names that come up when you search online for information about victims of the Oakland County child killer. Police have either disproven any connection to the Oakland County child killer case, or there is no conclusive evidence linking them to the serial killings. Those names are Jane Louise Allen. And did you look these ones up when I sent you over that screenshot, Harriet?
No, but I mean, I've been seeing those names because I've been working on another communication that is linked to all of this mess. So I haven't really looked at all of theirs, but I'm very OCCK right now, and just probably overdosing on it.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're coming to an end. I think this is our 9th and final episode on the OCCK cases. So we had Jane Louise Allen, who was 14, Kimberly Alice King, that was 12, Cynthia Ray Cadu, 16, and Sheila Schrock, 14. 2 of these cases remain unsolved to this day, but convictions have come down in 2 of the other cases. So the murder of Jane Louise Allen, we talked about some time ago. She was 14, last seen and alive in Royal Oak at 12:30 p.m. on August 7th, 1976. Police said that afternoon she hitchhiked. So here we've got another hitchhiker, right? And this is what's going up and down California with the Zodiac killer, but it's void of these murders during this time. So we've got a question: why is there nothing happening in California while everything's taking place over here in Minnesota and Michigan? So she hitchhiked 17 miles to visit her boyfriend in Auburn Heights. Her boyfriend told police he reprimanded her. What's that?
Nothing.
That's okay. Just out loud all you want. Reprimanded her for hitchhiking, and she left his house shortly after. 4 days after she disappeared, the decomposed body of a girl thought to be 17 years old was found floating in the Miami River near Miamisburg, Ohio. Her hands were tied behind her back with pieces of a white t-shirt. Clothing, jewelry, and a recently sutured cut on her wrist led police to identify her as Jane Allen. The coroner in Ohio believes she was dead before she was thrown into the river, possibly from carbon monoxide poisoning. Now, I want to say, how are they determining that there's no connection or evidence that connects these murders when we know that one of the victims from OCCK died from poisoning, correct?
Yep, carbon monoxide poisoning. 3 of them.
Royal Oak are the towns in Oakland County?
Royal Oak she was last seen in she was last seen in Royal Oaks, but her body was found in the Miami River near Miamisburg, Ohio. Right. I'd have to see how that plays out on the scheme of things, but then we've got them being abducted from one jurisdiction and then being found in another jurisdiction, which again causes that crossfighting of law enforcement. Who gets the case? So her hands were tied behind her back with pieces of a white t-shirt, clothing, jewelry, and recently sutured cut on her wrist led piece. Oh, I got that one. Carbon monoxide poisoning. So really my statement is they're stating that there's nothing that connects the two, when the reality is we have somebody in the OCC case, case that had passed from a carbon monoxide poisoning. So
that was Mihalek.
Right. Definitely. So why are they saying there's nothing that connected it?
And the town she was seen in are in Michigan. She's from Michigan, right?
Right. These are all people taken out of Michigan. Yes.
That's where the police department got that funny letter. So, yes.
Right. Well, and let's continue. Police believe Allen, now we've got the funny letter from Allen, right, was picked up while hitchhiking and either deliberately or accidentally killed by the motorist, who then disposed of her body in the river. In a 1978 report, police said she had no connection to the OCCK cases. That's just insane. How are they going to make a connection if the MO is the same? But I think this is where it comes back to them doing the link analysis. It was very complicated for law enforcement to do a link analysis, especially when there was a great divide in the area in which the individual was either abducted or dumped, or, the MOs are different, or the time frame is just out of whack for them. So they just really can't see to link these things. But I think the carbon monoxide poisoning is a very good reason to link this to the OCCK cases. Let's see. The disappearance of Kimberly Alice King disappeared in 1979 and has still not been found. She is not related to Tim King, but King, and we talked about this, I believe, in the DC Freeway Phantom cases where they had same names, right? Same first names, some had same last names. It was kind of like this name game thing that was going on. Kimberly King was last seen on September 16th, 1975 at a friend's house in Warren. She walked from her friend's house and went to payphone to call her sister. So now we've got that payphone relation, which is probably a liquor store or a convenience store. Her sister told her she shouldn't be out on the street at that hour and told her to return to her friend's home. Kimberly King returned to the home but left out a window around 11 p.m. that night. Officials believe she was murdered. Officials have not noted a confirmed link to the OCCK case, but her name is mentioned in several websites. Police believe her disappearance and suspected death are linked to suspected serial killer Arthur Ream. So now we've heard Alan in regards to the last victim, and now Arthur. So Arthur Lee Allen. I don't know where the red herrings should end in this point. It says he is in prison for the murder of a 13-year-old Cindy Zarzitsky. I'm never going to be able to say that. Who was killed in 19... It's Zarzykki. Zarzicki.
I'm just going to say it took me 3 weeks to get my helix name pronunciation correct. So good luck with that.
So who was killed in 1986? Police believe Ream is responsible for 4 to 6 murders. So it sounds to me like they're hanging their hat on this guy. The murder of Cynthia Ray Cadieux, 16, was last seen at 8:30 p.m. on January 15th, 1976 in Roseville. Her nude body was found at 1:05 a.m. the next morning on the side of Franklin Road in Bloomfield Township by a motorist. Police said her skull had been crushed by a blunt instrument. Police said she had been abducted, sexually assaulted, murdered, and dumped on the roadside. Her clothing was never found. Bobby Anglin, also known as Robert L. Anglin, was convicted of first-degree murder in 1979 and sentenced to life in prison. It'd be interesting to figure out what Mr. Bobby Anglin has to say. The murder of Sheila Schrock, 14, was sexually assaulted and then shot and killed on January 19th, 1976 while babysitting at a home in Birmingham. Schrock, an orphan, lived with her older brother in Birmingham. At 8:30 p.m. on the day she was murdered, Schrock was babysitting in an upstairs room of a home on Via Street. A man accused of breaking into 3 other houses in the neighborhood using a pry bar and a screwdriver broke into the home Schrock was in, according to reports. A neighbor said they were on their roof shoveling snow when they saw a man sexually assault her and then kill her with a series of shots from a pistol. Oliver Rhodes Andrews was convicted of first-degree murder in the death of Sheila Schrock. He was sentenced to life in prison in 1979. According to a 1976 report, Andrews confessed in a 4-hour confession that he sexually assaulted Schrock and shot her 5 times. He said he believed the home was empty when he broke in and Schrock surprised him. Andrews was suspected of around 200 burglaries in several states. So again, we have a burglar who is now admitting to having killed somebody. He didn't believe anybody was home. So where did the sexual assault come in if he's just a burglar who's burglarizing homes? So he stepped up his game at this point. Yeah, he becomes a rapist and a murderer outside of a robber. And you're stating that he's done this only one time in 200 burglaries? Very interesting.
I don't believe it.
I know. I always have to wonder what they've got going on when they get these confessions. So Tony also at the end of this article gave us the watch the 5-part Oakland County Child Killer docuseries. This might have been the URLs that I was giving you in the beginning of this show, but it lists 5 different episodes. You can find them at the link beneath my beneath the white box is a blue link, which again is the clickondetroit.com. And it's the local 2023 article that we're looking at right now. But you should be able to then go click on these other links for chapter 1 through 5 of the docuseries. I did make contact with Kathy Broad, which is the sister to Timothy King. I also reached out to Corey Williams, investigator for Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, retired Lieutenant Detective Jack Kallenfleisch, was emailed. Lieutenant Gary Miller at the Oakland County PD was also emailed and I requested a copy of the Dantle letter. He never responded. The eyewitnesses also reports a 1973 Pontiac Le Mans two-door coupe with 222 as part of the license plate with an older man. They claimed 55 to 65 years of age, 20 to 30 pounds overweight, and gray hair. So I do need to, and I haven't been on Kathy Broad's message board. I just know that there's a lot of information there that I would have to suck in. The bottom line at this point is I'm just pointing them towards a possibility of a suspect, not necessarily trying to work out all the caveats of their case. Dennis Kaufman indicates that Jack thought winter was far too cold to suffer and was moving the family again. So back to Texas, he's on his way. His mother's house is in Seguin or Bastrop or Austin area at this time. We see a picture of the family together with Flova written on the back. So this is confirming that Jack is back in Texas. But winter in Michigan, Minnesota or Michigan would be pretty much through March. So it explains why we don't see any evidence of the family in Texas until after Easter, which is April 10th of 1977, which would be the springtime, and it would be green, which is consistent with the pictures that we've seen. Don Traco, which is the private investigator for Gumshoe Private Investigations. He is somebody that I work with in cases. He brings me cases. I've asked him to look at and run background checks on people in this particular case. He found that Mr. Stephen Smith McKenzie of Coffee Chandler McKenzie, it looks like PA on 2 North Brook Street, Manning, South Carolina, 29102. It looks like he gave me his email and phone number. This may well be my reference to the coffee fellow in the pics following these murders. So we're going to have some more information coming up in regards to coffee. Now, I did take a look at this particular, are we at the solve of we did the solve of this last week, and I wanted to just oppose it to other writings in here, including something from the Sherry Jo Bates case. So we can see down here the Press Estates in Riverside with these blown up and overinflated letters like the letter P. We can see some of that happening here in the R's as well. I haven't done a complete rundown on it, but it does not look like it is Jack's handwriting as I posed that. Right. Albeit that letter E in the funky little way it leans to the side with the smaller top portion and a loop in the center. There is some consistency there, but I did not find that anything else was a match. But when I was looking at this, I noticed that on the explosive papers was that high back A. And the high back A is something that I talk about in the Zodiac writings, because I believe the individual actually normally would use the bell top A, which has the little overhang or top on it. And that in the case of attempting to remove that bell top in order to not be identified, we ended up with these, what I called high back A's. So it looks like a shortened stem on a D, but it's much taller than the bowl of the A. And that's why I call it a high back. I also looked at.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Can I interject?
Yes.
Okay. When I was surprised to see that, according to the method that is coming from James Earl Carter, the president at the time, he just got elected, and so I have good news for a lot of people to hear that there's going to be more good things about Jimmy Carter, even though Jack was pissed off at him sometimes. But I looked at Jimmy Carter's handwriting, and to this unprofessional, a lot of what's in there looks very close to how he wrote in 1977. So
you'll have to pass that on to me, because I do want to do an examination and comparison to both Jack to Carol Settlemyre, because when I get into Carol Settlemyre, and we talked about this before, the blown up P and the way that P is formed in police is very consistent with the blown up P in the Press Riverside letters.
That's the only thing I saw, and then I thought the rest was like, okay, Jimmy Carter, woo, okay.
Well,
anyway,
let's look at the word Raoul's here. So here we have Raoul's or Paul's, and maybe it's Paul's, but just connected off of the bowl. But when I look at that again, we have basically the same blown up reference, we have an angular point on the bottom of that particular letter, and the round as it comes back is pointed in the same direction. There is definitely some consistency, so I would like to do some handwriting examinations in comparison to this as well.
Whose notebook is that?
This was a phone book of a Carol Settlemeyer. It was found in Jack's belongings. When Dennis had dropped a bunch of Jack's belongings, I came across this phone book. I saw these receipts, and they're dated 12/20 of 76, which was around, is that Mahelic? December?
No, that's I believe Stebbins is 1976.
Stebbins?
Yeah.
Well, I think
I was just going to say there's a future one coming up in a couple of weeks.
Right.
There's
and then there's
coincidences. Stebbins was the overpass in Daly Plaza that Kennedy was going to go under before, right after he got shot. He actually did go under to the hospital. And then Raul, there's a guy named Raul that was involved in the Martin Luther King assassination. He was the handler of James Earl Ray.
Oh, wow.
Exactly.
Who was a patsy as well.
Well, we see a second receipt.
Coincidences.
A second receipt down here is dated March 3rd of 1977, which is within days and time frame of Timothy King's murder. So I saw these two receipts with these dates on them and was absolutely shocked. When I opened up the actual phone book, I found that majority of the information in it was from Michigan. So I started calling some of the family members that I believed were family members listed in the book. And I found either a sister or an aunt. I want to say it was a sister. Maybe I was passed through. I spoke to somebody first. They connected me with another individual where I was told that Carol Settlemeyer up and disappeared in 1977. They thought she had been killed. They thought she was dead. They hadn't heard from her for almost 30 years until 1993 when the Rangers had shown up in California to find her, to let her know that her father had passed. So that's when it came about that she was over in the California area, and she had literally moved from Michigan to South Lake Tahoe, which is where Jack left when he went there. What is the irony of that? Jack comes from South Lake Tahoe and moves to Cotton, Minnesota, where he's frequenting Michigan. And then this woman from Michigan is moving out of the state, not letting any family member know what happened to her, and they just presumed she was dead. I tracked her all the way back to Portola, California at some point. So basically some of the summary evidence of the OCCK murders in Michigan from 1976 to 77 and Cotton, Minnesota, unsolved murders in 1974. We are going to get to one more unsolved murder once we're done with this summary, and I believe that's the exit murder before Jack actually leaves to Texas. It says Jack has a picture circa 52 to 54 of a plane leaving the snow, a billboard of the nuclear power plant in Charlevoix, Michigan, a keychain with a Southfield return address if lost from GMAC, and several pics when it is green and with snow on the ground, and this is giving him proximity to the area. Dennis claimed that Jack was gone a lot during this time under the guise of hunting to feed the family. There are murders in Cotton, Minnesota and in Michigan, while the Zodiac has seemed to go silent in California. We see the by rope, by gun, and by poisoning, all of which has occurred in California with all the other murders. We have handwritten and typewritten messages, as we've seen in many of these cases. And there seems to be a ring of people involved based on the general census of those investigating these cases. The plight and offerings of the Dr. Danto letters show similarity in the same concepts we've covered in previous crimes, and Jack should be considered plausible for these attacks.
Or at least involved.
Hunting.
Yeah, there's a possibility of being involved, being the author, being, I mean, the killer even literally at some point. They did state that at one of the crime scenes, there was a vehicle that had backed up into a snowbank and left an impression of the taillight, which I believe they were able to identify some sort of car off of, but I haven't found that information again. So I do want to go back and see if I can locate that. So the Oakland County murders involve 4 different MOs, all children, bathed, clothes are cleaned, and laid out within public view, including the police department. This should be investigated. It is approximately 13 hours from where Jack is living in Cotton, Minnesota. Nora has family in Michigan, and Jack is said to be off hunting for food and running the back roads during this time frame. Dennis remembers Jack sending him out with a .22 rifle during this time and telling him not to come back until he killed something. But Dennis didn't have the heart for this, and that if Dennis would just kill something, he and Jack could be friends. That is such an odd statement to make to a child. I just can't even imagine. If you kill something, we can be friends. So that leads us to the final murder. He was hunting something. He was hunting everything.
Yeah, he was hunting the Nazis. So he was being very semantic by stating that, because that's what I got to solve. He was sent to hunt those Nazis. I believe 3 of them, and the people associated that helped them get here. So we're going to hear more about that in the next couple of weeks. Jeez.
Right. And so shortly after the murder of Timothy King, within days, if not a week or so, on March 24th, 1977, 19-year-old Cindy Joy Elias, on a logging road 8 miles north of Aurora, Minnesota, buried under a pile of trash, multi-traumatic head injuries, last seen in Virginia, Minnesota at a bar saying she was going to hitchhike since she was unable to find a ride. The dump site was far northeast along the road before crossing into Lake Superior and into Canada. Here's another Canada connection. It is my belief that it is this exit murder for Jack. Michigan and Minnesota never see this murder again. So this is pretty much the last murder we're going to see in this area, which is how many of the crime sprees end. So keep in mind that California is free of serial killings once again while Jack is gone. This has a Canada relation, and this would have been Jack's last Minnesota murder on his way out of the damn cold. I theorize that this was more the time frame when Jack would have moved the family, or possibly even moved the family and came back to get belongings. Either way, there's always some type of an exit murder after he leaves. And we can follow his work right on into the next state, which is Texas. Dennis speaks about a man coming from Minnesota to Texas with them, which was interesting. He believed that his name was John Hatfield or Hackfield, who they really didn't know, he claimed. But Stephen Dewhurst indicates that this John came to live with Dennis and the family in 1974 in Placerville, per his book. So I'm not sure how I could track this individual. I don't even know what he looks like to see if he's in any of the pictures. But it says, let's see. But he tells the story as if it had occurred in Texas at Jack's mobile home, which is clearly in 1977. So maybe even the time frames are off on Stephen's book. Stephen Dewhurst's book indicates that it was late winter 1976 and early 1977, towards springtime, that Jack moved the family from Minnesota to Texas. I tend to believe that it was springtime, since this would be more convenient to pack up and haul the whole family to another state. Says Jack got mad at John one night for telling the kids some of the things he and Jack had been up to when they were in Minnesota. Jack began beating him with the table leg, per Dennis, about the head. Jack came to and realized the children were all watching him and sent them to their room. However, Dennis said he will never forget the sound of the table leg hitting that man's head through the bedroom door. When they woke up the next day, the man was no longer seen again, and Jack paid the kids to bleach and clean the floors and area where John took the beating. So evidently, he said the area had been covered in blood, and the kids actually had to be the ones to clean it up. That's just disgusting. In Dennis Kaufman's book, the 1977 move from Minnesota to Texas at the end of winter is being proven by his own statements here. It says 1977 in Austin, Texas, we have to call the bomb squad out to the house because the dynamite was unstable and could have been very easily set off. This is the dynamite that I refer to that Jack purchased while he was in Minnesota. He claimed to have been blowing up tree stumps. We'll never know. Jack never went to jail for being in possession of the explosives. Dennis said it was legal in Minnesota, but not in Texas. In 1978, Austin, Texas, my younger brother Charles is born. He is Jack's real son. Jack got into a fight when we lived in Austin, and after he beat this guy with the table leg, I overheard Jack tell this guy, "Don't make me have to hurt you. I had to shoot a man in the face once. I don't want to have to do that again." Once, huh? Only once, Jack?
Yeah.
Now here's a picture where I've come to the understanding that Dennis remembers a lifestyle of moving from place to place in a travel trailer, moving from school to school until 1981. And Dennis remembers attending as many as 20 schools from the time of kindergarten until he quit school in the 10th grade. We do find a picture of Nora. Oh, That was backwards. A picture of Nora and Dennis after they evidently had left Jack and returned to California. And then we see Jack kind of going on a rampage, but there is a small series of murders that occurred in between there. It's called the Unsolved Murder Oklahoma Girl Scout Murders. Have you heard of the Girl Scout murders, Harriet?
No, but I'm going to be coming across a whole bunch of things, I think, in the next couple of weeks. So, yeah, that's how it happens. You know, you open up one lead and it leads to the other one, another one, and another one. So,
right.
We'll find out.
And we know that Jack has connections with Oklahoma. We know that he kept a P.O. box at least up till 1980. He was mentioned in a will as a beneficiary, that his address to be reached was at a P.O. box in Oklahoma. This says that on Camp Scott, a 610-acre summer camp for Girl Scouts and Brownies, was located 3 miles southwest of Locust Grove, Oklahoma. It was the site of the brutal bludgeoning deaths of 3 little Girl Scouts on June 13th, 1977. Police arrested Gene Leroy Hart, a Locust Grove native, and charged him with the murders of Lori Lee Farmer, Michelle Goose, and Doris Denise Milner. So the campground was operated by the Magic Empire Council of Girl Scouts. That is such an interesting name. Since 1928, Camp Scott was perfect for boating, hiking, fishing, and camping. Girl Scouts had come from the Tulsa metropolitan area to attend the summer camp. Introduced as roommates on the first night of camp, Lori Lee Farmer, Michelle Goose, and Doris Denise Milner went to their tent, Kiowa tent number 8. Their tent was located at the outer edge of the wooded camp and isolated from other tents. A last-minute change left tent number 8 one girl short, Wilkerson and Wilkerson. As night fell upon the camp, counselors checked to make sure that 100 Girl Scouts were in their assigned tents. As counselors walked away from the Kiowa tents, they saw a dim light in the woods, which then disappeared. The counselors thought the light in the woods was some sort of prank and went to their tent. At 2 a.m., counselors heard some Girl Scouts making noises and went to quiet the campers. Several Girl Scouts told them that a man looked into their tents and then walked away. Others said they heard someone outside their tent. Another Girl Scout heard a girl screaming, "Mama, Mama," at 2 a.m. W and W9, I'm not sure why. Oh, this must be their notations. Also, girls said a man grabbed them as they walked toward the bathroom. One girl became hysterical in the woods when she thought she saw a man. The counselors told the girls to go to sleep and went back to their own tent. They didn't look around for the strange man that several of the Girl Scouts had told them about. So clearly, he's not looking to just abduct somebody. If he's poking his head into tents, he's looking for something in specifics, wouldn't you think?
Yep, or somebody in particular.
Yeah, why wouldn't you just take the first kid you could, quiet him up, and run off with him if your whole intent was just to, rape or kill somebody? Why would you make yourself so well known and seen by so many individuals? Anyways, at 6 a.m. on Tuesday, June 13th, Carla Sue Wilhite, a counselor at Camp Scott, went to take an early shower. She walked, we got about 5 minutes left here. She walked on the trail and noticed some things under a large tree. As she got closer, she noticed some sleeping bags. Then she saw Doris Denise Milner's nude body. At that time, Carla couldn't see the other 2 dead bodies. The other bodies were still zipped up in their sleeping bags and naked from the waist down. At 6:30 a.m., Mays County District Attorney Sidney Wise said all 3 of the small victims had died from blunt trauma to the back of the head and strangulation. All of the girls had lengths of cord around their neck and had been gagged and bound with a 2-inch wide black electrical tape. Now, all of these things have been found in Jack's belongings, and the white cord definitely comes back to many of the crimes that we've been looking at. All the victims had been sexually molested. Officers found their clothes a few feet from their bodies. The killer or killers carried the bodies approximately 100 to 150 yards from their tent and piled the young victims under. So now we're back to the piling of bodies, which we saw in other camp murders, and we'll see in the yogurt shop murders. There's just this stacking of the bodies that seems to be following around these cases as well. At the scene,
how do you do that? He couldn't carry all 3 at once, so that means he had to carry one out, go back, and carry the other one.
Right, and how do you subdue all 3 of them? One would be screaming while you're trying to handle the other. It gets very interesting, to say the least. Although the Girl Scouts, the ones that actually only witnessed a man, one single male.
Yeah.
So somebody's got something going on. At the scene, detectives found a large roll of black duct tape and a red and white 9-volt flashlight near the bodies. The lens of the flashlight was partially covered to allow only a mere pencil of light through. That's what struck me about the Zodiac, because he liked to use the flashlight taped to the top of his gun in order to shine the light as a gun sight to be able to shoot from. So it's very interesting that just a small dot in this flashlight was able to be seen because the rest was covered up with tape. Let's see. The lens, yeah, blah, blah, blah.
2-inch wide electrical tape is odd. It's usually either 3/4 or an inch.
Right. This says now black duct tape, so they may have misstated.
Yeah, duct is 2 inches. Yeah.
Yeah. So it appeared too large to be one of the victim. Okay, wait a minute here. The lens of the flashlight was partially covered to allow only a mere pencil of light through. Inside the death tent, detectives found the bloody footprint of a waffle-type jungle boots. It appeared too large to be one of the victims' prints. Large pools of blood were found near the beds of 2 of the girls. So that's how he got them out of the tent. He must have knocked them out. The other girl could have been strangled to death after being pulled from the tent. Shortly after the discovery of the bodies of the Girl Scouts, Governor David Boren ordered a task force of Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation agents and highway troopers to assist the Mays County authorities in the investigation. Governor Boren also arranged the use of 3 bloodhounds from Pennsylvania to help track down the killer or killers of the 3 little Girl Scouts. Where are we at? What's that? I know, right?
Pennsylvania, aren't they in Oklahoma?
They are in Oklahoma.
Why'd you get the dogs from Pennsylvania? It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Maybe that's the only place they had dogs. I don't know.
Yeah,
why else did they ask
hounds in Oklahoma?
Well, but why else do they ask people like Tim Miller to go all the way to Florida to investigate the Casey Anthony case? You know, he's from Texas, and they've got him going all the way to Florida with his resources, his horses, his dogs, his everything, in order to search for Casey Anthony's baby's body. Well, that puts us back down to approximately 1 minute. I know we got started a little late on the clock, but it shows here on my end. We'll probably just have to continue this on our next show. Is there anything that either of you two would like to add?
No, I'm just looking forward to things like the yogurt shop murders. Is that in Sacramento, by the way?
That's in Texas, and I want to say that's in 1991.
Yeah, okay. Well, we got some stuff that involves the yogurt shop coming up in
your solves?
It has to do with the 1980s and the one that was in Sacramento.
Interesting. So, and I believe, if I'm correct in my recollections, is that this is another time in which Nora has left Jack when the yogurt shop murders occur. So Jack is back in Texas with mom, and I believe that there's evidence that supports that. And Nora has left Jack once again. But I want to say the yogurt shop murders were, maybe it is in the 80s, but I want to say that it was 1990, in the 1990s. But we'll see once we get there. We're getting close. We're finally getting out of the 70s. All right, you guys. Well, everyone,
more shows.
I know, 100%. We're getting there. Well, I want everybody to have a wonderful weekend. Take care of yourself, and we will see you next week for another episode.
Yeah, thank you. Oh,